The committee hearing room fell silent as Senator Patty Murray, at 74 years old, looked across the table at Representative Jasmine Crockett with the kind of condescending smile that had dominated Washington for over 3 decades. What happened? In the next 30 seconds would become the most viral political moment of the year, leaving Murray completely exposed and Crockett standing as the unexpected victor. Murray had walked into this hearing confident, clutching her stack of papers, like weapons, ready to lecture the 43-year-old freshman representative about how things really work in Washington. She thought her decades of experience would crush this young upstart from Texas. But Crockett had come prepared with something Murray never expected, the receipts that would turn the entire hearing upside down. The cameras were rolling, social, media was watching, and what started as Murray's attempt to embarrass a newcomer became her own public humiliation. This wasn't just another boring committee meeting. This was the moment when old Washington arrogance met new generation preparation, and the results shocked everyone watching. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the marble walls of the hearing room. Staff members lined the walls, notebooks in hand, expecting another routine session of political theater. The press gallery was half empty. After all, this was supposed to be a standard legislative review, not the political earthquake it was about to become. Murray adjusted her reading glasses and straightened her papers, that familiar smirk playing at the corners of her mouth. She had done this dance 1,000 times before, putting younger members in their place with a combination of institutional knowledge and barely concealed contempt. Crockett sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table, watching Murray's preparations with the intensity of a chess master studying her opponent's opening moves. She had spent weeks preparing for this moment, knowing that Murray's reputation for condescension toward younger members made this confrontation inevitable. While other representatives were checking their phones or shuffling through unrelated paperwork, Crockett's attention was laser-focused on the woman across from her. Before we dive into this incredible political showdown that had everyone talking, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss these explosive political moments that are reshaping American politics. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. The tension in that room was so thick, you could cut it with a knife. Murray sat there in her navy blue blazer, silver hair perfectly styled, looking every bit the establishment senator she'd been for over 30 years. Her pearl necklace caught the light as she leaned forward, the picture of senatorial authority. Across from her sat Crockett, younger, sharper, and completely ready for whatever Murray was about to throw at her. Her dark suit was impeccable, her posture confident but respectful, the image of a professional who had nothing to prove, but everything to gain. Neither woman knew that this exchange would end up trending nationwide within the hour, but the stage was set for political drama at its finest. The C-SPAN cameras hummed quietly in the corner, their red recording lights glowing like warning beacons. Social media managers from both camps sat in the gallery, phones ready to capture and disseminate whatever sound bites emerged from this session. The air conditioning system struggled against the heat, generated by dozens of bodies packed into the ornate chamber, creating an atmosphere that felt charged with anticipation. To understand why this confrontation was so explosive, you need to know exactly who these two women are and what they represent in American politics today. The contrast couldn't be more striking, and that's exactly what made this moment so powerful. Senator Patty Murray has been in Washington since 1993. That's over 30 years of political power. She calls herself a mom in tennis shoes, but don't let that folksy image fool you. Murray has built her entire career on the idea that experience equals effectiveness. She served on major committees, passed legislation, and positioned herself as the voice of reason and experience in the Senate. At 74, she represents everything about old Washington, the backroom deals, the seniority system, and the belief that newcomers should sit down, shut up, and learn from their betters. Murray's political persona was carefully crafted over decades of media appearances and committee hearings. She perfected the art of the knowing smile, the slight shake of the head when younger members spoke, the theatrical sighs that conveyed her supposed superior wisdom. Her office walls were lined with photos of her alongside every major political figure of the past 3 decades, a visual resume designed to intimidate and impress visitors. Staff members whispered about her legendary temper when challenged, particularly by younger women who dared question her methods or priorities. The media had long portrayed Murray as the sensible veteran, the steady hand in turbulent political times. Op-ed writers regularly praised her institutional knowledge and bipartisan relationships, though few bothered to examine what those decades of experience had actually produced in recent years. Murray had become comfortable with this reputation, using it like a shield against serious scrutiny of her actual effectiveness. Her office operated like a well-oiled machine of self-promotion. Press releases were carefully crafted to highlight her involvement in every piece of successful legislation, while quietly burying or ignoring the failures. Her staff had become expert at spinning defeats as moral victories and missed opportunities as strategic patience. The result was a public image that bore little resemblance to her actual legislative record, but Murray had become so accustomed to deference that she rarely encountered anyone willing to challenge the narrative. Murray's greatest strength has always been her ability to intimidate younger politicians with her resume. She's used her 3 decades of experience like a club, beating down anyone who dares question her approach or suggests that maybe, just maybe, the old ways of doing things aren't working anymore. She's particularly harsh on young women of color who dare to speak up, often using that condescending tone that makes you feel like you're being scolded by a school principal. In committee hearings, Murray had developed a reputation for what insiders called the treatment, a combination of patronizing questions, theatrical eye-rolling, and barely concealed contempt that was designed to humiliate younger members into submission. She had perfected the art of making substantive policy questions sound naive, of making passionate advocacy seem childish, of making fresh perspectives appear foolish. It was a form of psychological warfare that had kept many potential challengers silent over the years. On the other side of this political battlefield sits Representative Jasmine Crockett, and she couldn't be more different from Murray. At 43, Crockett is young by Washington standards, but don't mistake youth for inexperience. This woman is a lawyer who has spent years fighting for justice, first in Texas courtrooms and now in the halls of Congress. She didn't come to Washington to play nice or follow the old rules. She came to shake things up and actually get results for the people who sent her there. Crockett's background as a trial lawyer had given her skills that many career politicians lacked. She knew how to build a case methodically, how to present evidence persuasively, and most importantly, how to stay calm under pressure while delivering devastating blows to her opponents. Her legal training had taught her that preparation trumped intimidation every time, and that the most effective attacks were those based on irrefutable facts rather than personal animosity. Unlike many of her colleagues who had entered politics, straight from college or family connections, Crockett had earned her way to Congress through years of hard work in the real world. She had represented clients who couldn't afford high-powered attorneys, fought against corporate malfeasance, and built a reputation for being thoroughly prepared for every case she took. This background had given her a different perspective on how politics should work. Less about maintaining relationships and protecting egos, more about achieving concrete results for real people. Her approach to congressional work reflected her legal background. Where other members relied on staff summaries and talking points, Crockett read the actual legislation. Where others accepted conventional wisdom about what was possible, she researched the data to form her own conclusions. Where others were content to make speeches and issue press releases, she focused on building the coalitions necessary to actually pass meaningful bills. Crockett represents something that terrifies establishment politicians like Murray. She's smart, she's prepared, and she absolutely refuses to be intimidated by anyone, regardless of how long they've been warming a seat in Washington. She's part of a new generation of politicians who believe that results matter more than seniority, and that fresh ideas can be more powerful than decades of doing the same thing over and over again. The freshman representative had quickly gained a reputation among her colleagues as someone you didn't want to debate unprepared. She had a lawyer's instinct for finding the weakest points in an opponent's argument and the rhetorical skills to exploit those weaknesses effectively. But more than that, she had something many Washington veterans had lost: genuine passion for the work and impatience with the games that often substituted for actual governance. The stakes of this confrontation went far beyond these two women. This was really about two competing visions of American politics. Murray represented the old guard, the idea that experience and seniority should automatically command respect and deference. Crockett represented the new wave, politicians who believe that effectiveness and results matter more than how long you've been in office. But there was something else that made this moment so charged. Murray had been particularly condescending to younger members of Congress, especially women of color, throughout her career. She had a reputation for pulling the "I've been here longer than you" card whenever someone challenged her, and she seemed to take special pleasure in trying to embarrass newcomers in public hearings. Crockett, on the other hand, had been quietly building a reputation as someone who did her homework. While other politicians were focused on getting on television or making headlines, Crockett was studying legislation, tracking voting records, and building the kind of detailed knowledge that would prove devastating in a confrontation like this. The hearing was supposed to be routine, just another discussion about legislative priorities. But Murray had decided to make it personal, choosing this moment to publicly lecture Crockett about experience and how things work in Washington. She thought she could score easy points by putting this young representative in her place. What she didn't realize was that Crockett had been waiting for exactly this opportunity, and she had prepared for it like a lawyer preparing for the biggest case of her career. The confrontation began innocently enough, with routine discussion about upcoming legislation. The committee had been reviewing standard procedural matters for nearly an hour: budget allocations, timeline adjustments, the usual bureaucratic minutia that makes up most of congressional work. Several members were visibly bored, scrolling through their phones or doodling on legal pads. The stenographer's fingers moved mechanically across her keyboard, recording words that seemed destined for the dustbin of legislative history. But Murray had been waiting for her moment, watching Crockett participate in the discussions with growing irritation. Every time the younger representative asked a pointed question or suggested a more efficient approach, Murray's jaw tightened imperceptibly. She had seen this before. Ambitious newcomers who thought they could waltz into Congress and immediately improve on systems that had been refined over decades. It was time to put this particular upstart in her place. Murray leaned forward in her chair, that familiar condescending smile spreading across her face as she prepared to deliver what she thought would be a knockout punch. Her gold-rimmed reading glasses caught the light as she tilted her head, adopting the pose of a patient teacher about to correct an errant student. "Representative Crockett," she began, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sweetness that every woman recognizes as an incoming attack. "I think it's important for newer members to understand how legislation actually works in this body." The room shifted. You could feel the energy change as everyone realized Murray was about to make this personal. Crockett sat perfectly still, her expression neutral, but you could see in her eyes that she knew exactly what was happening. This wasn't going to be a policy discussion. This was going to be a lecture, and Murray was positioning herself as the teacher talking down to a student. "You see," Murray continued, clearly enjoying herself, "when you've been in Congress for just a couple of years, it's easy to think you understand the complexities of federal legislation. But those of us who have been here for decades, and I've been serving the people of Washington state for over 30 years, we know that good intentions aren't enough. You need experience. You need relationships. You need to understand how the system actually works." The condescension was so thick you could practically see it. Murray was speaking slowly, deliberately, as if she were explaining basic concepts to a child. Several other committee members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, recognizing the tone and knowing that Murray was about to try to humiliate Crockett in front of the cameras. But Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't interrupt. She just sat there, taking notes, letting Murray dig her own grave with every word. And Murray, drunk on her own sense of superiority, kept digging. "I've passed major legislation that has helped millions of Americans," Murray went on, her voice getting more patronizing with each sentence. "I've worked with presidents from both parties. I've built the relationships that actually get things done in this town. And I have to say, Representative Crockett, that some of your recent statements suggest you might benefit from understanding how experienced legislators approach these complex issues." The insult was clear, even though Murray wrapped it in political speak. She was basically calling Crockett naive, inexperienced, and out of her depth. It was the kind of power play that Murray had used successfully for years to keep younger politicians in line. The problem was, she had picked the wrong target this time. Crockett looked up from her notes, and for just a moment, you could see a flash of something in her eyes. Not anger, something much more dangerous. It was the look of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Someone who had prepared for this confrontation more thoroughly than Murray could have imagined. "Senator Murray," Crockett said, her voice calm and steady, "I appreciate your perspective on experience and effectiveness in Congress. Since you've raised the topic, I think it would be valuable to examine the actual record and see what all that experience has produced." Murray's smile faltered slightly. This wasn't the response she expected. She had anticipated that Crockett would either back down apologetically or get defensive and angry, either of which would have played right into Murray's hands. But Crockett's measured response suggested she had something else in mind. "I mean," Crockett continued, still in that perfectly calm tone, "if we're going to discuss the value of experience versus fresh approaches, we should probably look at the actual results, don't you think? After all, the people we represent care more about what we accomplish than how long we've been here." Now Murray was starting to look uncomfortable. This wasn't going according to her script. She had expected to deliver her lecture, watch Crockett squirm, and then move on with her authority firmly established. Instead, Crockett was suggesting they actually examine the record, something Murray definitely hadn't prepared for. Other committee members were now paying close attention. The staff members lining the walls had stopped their quiet conversations and were focused on this exchange. Everyone could sense that something bigger was about to happen. Murray tried to regain control. "Well, Representative Crockett, I think my record speaks for itself. 30 years of service, countless pieces of legislation, working across the aisle to get things done. That's what experience looks like." But Crockett was ready for that response too. She had her own stack of papers now, and she was flipping through them with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what she was looking for. "Actually, Senator Murray, since you've made experience and effectiveness the issue here, I think it would be helpful to look at some specific examples. I've done some research on your legislative record, particularly in recent years, and I think the committee might find the results interesting." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Murray's confident expression was completely gone now, replaced by something that looked suspiciously like panic. She had opened this door by lecturing Crockett about experience and effectiveness, but she clearly hadn't expected anyone to actually examine her record in detail. Crockett had turned the tables completely. Instead of defending herself against Murray's condescending lecture, she had shifted the entire conversation to focus on results and effectiveness, exactly the area where Murray was most vulnerable. The experienced senator had walked straight into a trap set by the supposedly inexperienced representative, and everyone in the room could see it happening in real time. What happened next would go down as one of the most devastating political takedowns in recent memory. Crockett had spent weeks preparing for this moment, and it showed in every calculated word that came out of her mouth. The transformation in Crockett was immediate and striking. Gone was the respectful freshman representative who had been quietly taking notes throughout the hearing. In her place sat a seasoned trial attorney who had just been handed the perfect opening by an overconfident opponent. Her posture straightened, her eyes sharpened, and when she spoke, her voice carried the unmistakable authority of someone who had done their homework better than anyone else in the room. room. The other committee members sensed the